Hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to this next video lesson. We are going to create a vote calculator. And really this is a lesson on the if statement, on the selection structure, making sure that you understand that using an if-else statement. So let's go ahead and click File, New, Project. And we want to create a C# program specifically with the Windows Forms application selected. And over here I'm going to type in C#. I'll say selection structure, and let's call this the vote calculator. Alright, after the form comes up, we're going to want to drag and drop a button, a label, and a text box. And I also want to work with radio buttons and a group box. So let me drag and drop the standard stuff. Button, a label, and a text box. Button and a text box. Let me select these, and I want to change those to 12 points in terms of the font size. So I'll select font size and type in the number 12, press enter. Alright, and then let's go ahead and move the label up to the upper left hand corner, and let's change the text property to enter your name. Enter. Let's place the text box right next to it, so that way the user can enter their name. I'm going to increase the size just a little bit. That looks good. Alright, let me move the button aside, and what I want to do over here is to place a group box and then two radio buttons that have the text yes or no. So over here where it says containers, you'll see over here is a group box. Let's drag and drop that over here. Okay, a little bit too high. That font is too small, so let me go ahead and change that to 12 points in the font property. So I enter 12, enter. And then I have these radio buttons right here. I'm going to drag one radio button inside the group box. And that says radio button. It's already coming in at 12 points because the group box is 12 points, so that's nice. And let me change the font, not the font, rather the text to yes. Enter. And I'll take this guy and move it inside the upper left-hand corner of the group box. That looks good. Instead of the word group box, I better change that before I forget. Text. Instead of group box, we'll say adult and question mark. All right, are you an adult? Yes or no? So I'll just take this guy, copy and paste, which is Control-C, Control-V as in Victor. Place that underneath here like that. Type in the word no. All right. Something like this. Something like this looks good. And then I'll move this like this. Let's see what the guidelines recommend. I think that's too high. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit. Yeah, it looks good. And then we'll just make this a big button. So all the way down to the bottom part of the group box, all the way to the top of the group box, and let's go all the way next to it, and then over here. Yep, that looks good. Now for the button, let's change its text property to submit. And that looks good. Now let's place a label down here that's going to receive the output. So copy and paste this label over here. And I want to make sure that I can move this thing around and resize it. So that's going to be auto size false, and also border style fixed single. And let me go ahead and resize it. Looks good. I don't want the text to be in the upper left hand corner, so let's change the text align to middle center. And then of course no initial text. So double click, get rid of that by deleting it. Looks good. Now I'm going to resize the form, and I want to get rid of the minimize and the maximize box. So double click on maximize, double click on minimize box. And then I want to change that from form 1 to vote calculator. Okay, looks good. Next, let's give names to the various items. Before I do that, let me save my work. And then let's give a name to the text box. So we're going to call that txt name. The button obviously will be BTN submit. And then we have a label down here. That's going to be LBL result. And then I have these two radio buttons. So the Hungarian notation for a radio button is RDB. So we're going to say RDB, yes, adult. And this guy will be RDB, no, adult. Okay? All right, so you've given everything a name. Go ahead and save your work. We don't need the toolbox. We don't need the properties panel anymore. So we have to ask ourselves, what event must be triggered so that we can get the person's name and get whether they're an adult or not, and say something like, okay, for example, if I type in Robert, say, Robert, good news, you can vote, or Robert, terrible news, you can't vote. Okay, so let's double click the submit button so that we can go into the code area. And what we want to do is to type in the following comments. So we'll say declarations, get user input, calculation, and finally output. Alright, so the idea is to grab the person's name, and we're also going to find out if whether or not the user can vote based on their age, or based on whether the fact they're an adult or not, based on the radio buttons, I should say. So what I'll do over here is in the declaration section, we'll say we're going to create a string, and that is going to be called username. And if I wanted to, I could initialize it to nothing. And what else do I need? I'm going to create a Boolean data type. That's the Boolean data type. And I'll say adult, or how about this, is adult. And we'll just leave it like that. So the Boolean data type basically is a yes or no, or true or false. And a lot of programmers like to put the word is in front of it to indicate, is this true or is this false? So are you an adult? Yes. Are you an adult? No. So we'll leave it like that. In terms of the user input, well, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get the data from the text box. Now, this is a text, so therefore I do not have to use a convert.toString. I can just simply get this directly from the text box. So whatever the text is for this text box, let's put it into this variable called username. And then we'll say this. We'll say if for this radio button, so radio button, and specifically I'm looking for radio button yes adult. All right, if this is checked, right? So if checked, is true, and then I'm going to put an open and close curly braces. Let's check to see if the radio button is in fact checked, because if it is, then we can set this is adult variable to true. Now, if that's not the case, then we'll say else, and then we'll say is adult, and set that to false. All right, so by the way, you don't have to have these curly braces if you just have one line of code after your if statement. I think I just do it out of habit. I like to put these open and close curly braces regardless if I have one line or 2 lines of code, more than one line of code, that is. But if it's just one line of code, technically speaking, you don't have to have the curly braces. Okay, so now that we know if whether or not the person is an adult, we can use another if statement. We can say, okay, if is adult is true, open and close curly braces. If that's true, then the LBL result.text property, we're going to set that to whatever the user's name is. So whatever the user's name is, and I'm going to concatenate that with a string, comma, great news. You can vote. Terminate that with a semicolon. Now that's if it's true. If it's not true, so we'll have an else statement, open and close curly braces. And basically it's the same thing, so I'll just simply copy this, Control-C, Control-V as in Victor, paste, but the message is going to be a little bit different. We'll say terrible Terrible news. And maybe I'll say you can't vote. I shouldn't say maybe. I absolutely will say you can't vote. Like that. All right, so the if statement will make a decision. Notice the two equals symbols inside of the parentheses. This is not assignment. This is asking if there's an equivalence. In essence, this is asking a question. Is the adult variable equal to true? That's the question that's being asked. If that's true, then you do this. Otherwise, the else statement says you do this. So only this can occur or this can occur. In logic, we say these are mutually exclusive, right? So only one of these can be activated. Kind of like you going to your automobile and turning on your stereo and pushing on one of your buttons on the car stereo. Either for whatever button that you guys select, it's going to only select that particular radio station and not any of the others. Okay, so it looks like we're wrapping up here. Let me go ahead and click the Start button, run the program, and let's see what happens. So the first thing that I'm going to do is to type in my name, Robert. Adult, I'll select yes. Submit. Robert, great news, you can vote. Okay, let me select no. Robert, terrible news, you can't vote. Okay, so everything works, but the one thing that I don't like is that the yes radio button should be on by default. Or maybe you want the no radio button to be on by default. So what I'll do is this. I'll go back to the design and I'll select the yes radio button. Let me open up the properties. First, let me close this. We'll open up the properties and you see where it says checked. Currently it's set to false. Let me double click and change that to true. That way this is always going to be on by default. And then after we type in our name and perhaps maybe I want to select no or something like that. At least one of these items is selected by default. So let me type in Jackson and no, he's not an adult. Submit. Jackson, terrible news, you can't vote. Perfect. I select Joshua and I select adult yes. Submit. Joshua, great news, you can vote. All right, so this is a quick video lesson teaching you a little bit about the if statement and how it works with its else component. You also learned about the group box and also a couple of radio buttons and how you can make it so that one of them is on by default, and then of course when you select one, the other is deselected. And that's it. So this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. Have a good day. See you next time.